Hello and welcome to this short video on AMQP interaction on Informatica Cloud Real Time. So what we're going to be looking at today is how we interact with AMQP, in this case a queue. It could be also a topic or exchange. We've got an example here with, in this case, it's actually just RabbitMQ, but it could be any sort of AMQP 1.0 compliant server. And this same approach that I'm going to go through and show you today is also applied to other messaging such as JMS as well. So the way that within Informatica Cloud Real Time messaging is really viewed is the ability to not only start a process, so you could be using it as really an event to drive a particular end-to-end workflow or some sort of interaction with other external or internal APIs and data sources. And likewise, you may need the ability to actually publish onto a queue or a topic to actually deliver something that's then going to fan out and be delivered to multiple downstream applications. So, a very useful paradigm within this environment here, and very easy to set up as well. So in this case, what I'm actually doing is I have RabbitMQ installed here. In this case, it's actually just running on AWS, and I'm going to be showing you how I've created a connection to RabbitMQ so that we can listen in to this particular demo queue that I created here, and kick off in real time, kick off processes that in reaction to those messages. So just going back to the setup of this, so I'm here in Informatica Cloud Service and Process Designer here, which is where we do all of the design of real-time processes. And the first thing I want to show you is I've gone through and created a new connection. And all you need to do this is just go to New and Connection. And we're going to use this to just define all the details to connect to our instance of RabbitMQ. The same would be true of any other different type of provider that you might be using. So all I need to do is in my connection type, I've selected from the different connection types the AMQP type here, and I just give it a name in this case. And I've built this out just to save time and make this video a bit shorter. But the basics are all in place. So you give it a name. You can assign it some tags, which should just make it easier to find if you've got a lot of these different processes. And the other thing here is that we're actually running this particular connection on a secure agent. Now, the details of what a secure agent is are covered in quite a lot of depth on other videos, but just suffice to say, this is really the execution engine for Informatica Cloud, and this applies to real-time as well as our batch use cases. It's all the same runtime engine that is actually installed behind your company firewall. Or equally, in some instances, you could be running this completely in the cloud. But for JMS and for AMQP, obviously we've got an instance of the messaging provider that's running inside your company network, and so we want to use an agent to actually connect to an interface with that. So I've selected my agent. In this case, I've actually got it running on Amazon in this case, but it could be running on a server inside your company network. And then the rest of the details here are really just around connection to the RabbitMQ provider. So I've got a username and password here. I can specify my virtual host. I actually don't, I just need to specify localhost in this case because the agent is actually installed local to the RabbitMQ instance. So it can get to it locally, and the default port that's been provided there as well. And really that's all there is to this particular tab here. Now, once I've created that connection, and I can actually just run a quick test to see if we're connecting, that's passed. And then I'm able to set up my sources and targets. And what really you're doing is once you've set up a source, it becomes available for use within processes. So you can, for example, kick off a process in response to a source. and also write to targets as well. So the reason this is important is because this is not just specific to JMS or specific to AMQP. This is actually the way that we deal with events across the board within Informatica Cloud Real Time. So if you wanted to kick off a process in reaction to a file, for example, arriving in a particular folder, you would be able to do exactly that based on the type of connection that you've set up. And the same goes for writing. You might want to write to a delimited file. You might want to put a message on a JMS queue. Again, you can configure that within the event targets here, and then just reuse the same pattern across your processes. So here, in this case, I'm working on AMQP, obviously, so my event sources that are available because of the connection type is an AMQP source here. And when I've defined that, it just creates this source here, and I just go through and fill in the relevant information. So I've given it a name, default queue source, and I've set it to enabled. My destination type in this case is actually going to be a queue. It could equally be a topic. It really just depends on what type of implementation you're looking to support and the type of functionality you want from the provider as well. So those will obviously vary by the different providers that you happen to be using. And then we've got we've got the queue name in this case, and we've got the different types of payload format that are supported, whether it happens to be binary files that you're sending, or in this case, in this demo, it's just going to be a JSON object that we're going to be sending. We've also got the ability to configure the dead letter queue that's going to be used in the event of a failure with processing. So we automatically ensure that messages that have failed are going to be going to the right place. And then likewise, when you come to the event target, similar setup here, you add the event target as an AMQP target, and we're going to tell it which queue we want to send it to and what the payload format is going to be. So once we've done that, we can run that test as I just did before, and we just click publish. And when we click publish, if we go into the management interface and go under connections, I'll just refresh that there, you'll see here that we've got an active connection now from Cloud Real Time through to RabbitMQ. And that's being handled by that secure agent that I mentioned. So the next step after that is to be we can actually start using this in our process. So I've got a very simple process that I've defined, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking messages off an AMQP queue, and then we're going to be pushing them immediately down to a MySQL database. And so you might be wondering, well, how do we configure the interaction with the MySQL database? Well, that's done in very much the same way. You've got a connection that you create here, and we're going to choose the JDBC generic cloud adapter as the connection type. So any JDBC compliant database we can interact with. Again, I'm going to allow this agent here to handle all the execution because this is the one that's installed locally to my MySQL instance. And you'll see here, I'm not going to go into it now, but we do have other videos that cover our support for OData as well, to expose this database via an OData provider, in an OData format, sorry. And also, just the additional connection parameters here that we've got a simple JDBC connection URL there. The driver itself that we want to use, so you may already have a JDBC driver that you happen to be using, and as long as it's compliant with JDBC, you can just load that up, give it the location, and point Informatica Cloud Real Time to that, and it will handle the interaction via that driver. And so just the same way, I can do a test here. It's passed, and when I publish, it's actually going to introspect the database, and it's going to look at all the different tables and create metadata to define the structure that I've got, to represent, the structure that I've got in that database. And that's important because it allows you to interact in your process with the database as if it was completely, it's really understood by this this design environment. So you'll see here, for example, in the step that I get to where I'm creating the record in MySQL, that's come down from the AMQP queue, I'm actually looking at the inputs and outputs, and I can see here that they're all given the proper data types. So in this particular table that I'm going for, which is, if I just switch over to my database, you see I've got an ID, I've got a key, and I've got a value. Very simple stuff, but the connection when I published has automatically looked at that table that I've got here, the AMQP DQ table, and it's read the necessary data types and published those out, so that when I go and use this, I don't have to I don't have to do anything particularly complex here. It's just automatically allowing me to work with this particular table. So let's just go through the process here. I've got my two connections published now. So I've got my connection to RabbitMQ and my connection to MySQL. So the only thing left is to define the end-to-end flow that I want. Now, if I'd created a process from scratch, I would have a blank canvas here. Just for the sake of time, I've just added in a few steps. You can add additional steps just by double-clicking the arrow here, and the different steps have their own types, depending on what type of action you want to initiate. So it could be, as we're going to see, the creation of a record in a database. It could be a call out to an API. And for example, I've got a whole series of different APIs in here that I could call out to. I won't go into that for the moment. Just on this video, I want to keep it quite specific to this use case. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, you'll see in my fields here, because we want to kick this process off in reaction to a message, in the start section, we're going to switch from our default, which is a REST-based API call to kick off the process, and we're going to switch to an event. And when we do that, we're going to select I've got the eligible connections here, one of which is RabbitMQ. So if I click that, and then I can select one of my event sources, and that was what I was defining in the previous step here in my event sources. That's exactly what this is here. So I'm going to say I want to kick it off if I get any message that arrives on this event source that I've defined. And as a result of selecting that, it's going to automatically define that I've got an input parameter here, which is going to be an AMQP message coming from RabbitMQ. And I've defined that I'm going to represent this message as an order. And we use a process object to do that. And all that, I'll show you the process object. It's very straightforward, but all it is a way of defining structure. So I'm defining the structure here. I've got my order ID and my amount. And that's really just to make it easier for me to actually work with this structure in memory. So here we are. I've got my order defined, and that's really all there is to it. So in terms of defining the inputs and outputs, the rest of it is going to be about just what are we going to do with the data as it arrives. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to want to do an assignment. And the assignment is to say we're going to pass what we got sent, which is the body of the message itself. And you can find this very easily. If I just click this drop down, I can go into my event and I can access either the headers or the message body. In this case, I've just said I want to assign the message body to this object that defines my order, which just has an order ID and an amount. So that's my definition of it. Then I have an interesting additional step in here, which it isn't really required, but I put it in there so you can see the flexibility here. I'm actually just calling off to an API, which happens to be a request bin. So for those of you who have not used request bin before, all it does is it records any request you send it. And I can just take this URL here, and I've implemented it as a connection. I won't go into the details of that just now, but it's very similar to the definition of the other connection types. I've just pointed it at this API and said send anything that I send this connection, send it to request bin. So my input fields are just a label and the payload of the request, and it's very useful for debugging what you're actually if you want to send to this API just to see what's in state, it's very easy to do that. So in this case, I've just given it a label of DQ, and I have sent it my order that I've received from the AMQP message. And then the final step here is, now we've got this information, we're actually going to place the order, or actually we're going to place the order ID, I should say, which again I got from just going to the order process object here and selecting order ID. We're going to put that in the database, in the MySQL instance, and we're going to just put a key of DQ. I mean, it could be obviously anything you want defined on the structure that you want to populate. And then the final step here is just to say, well, if it's executed successfully, then we want to send back an acknowledgement. You could just as easily send this acknowledgement early. So you might want to say, well, it's going to be fire and forget. And in actual fact, what we want to do here is set the end milestone and send a synchronous response of 200 early on in the process, just to let the queue know that it's been processed. Now, in this case, I'm just going to leave that for now. And we're going to say save. There's no error handling built into this process at the moment, but I could quite easily create a data decision here where I say, have we actually got a message? So I would look for event to see whether it's set or not, and when I click apply, I can then create a branch where I know that if it is set, I can go down this path of a success path here, and if it's not set, well, in that situation, I may want to actually send an email notification to somebody that there's been an error. In this case, I'm going to just delete that for the moment, and we can always come back and fill that in later. So that's all I need to do for now. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to publish. And when I publish that, it's basically going to sit in an active state, waiting for additional messages. So we just go back to the connections. We can see we've still got that active connection there. And so what I'm going to do is go into the RabbitMQ management section here. And I'm just going to paste in my payload. I'm going to publish a message onto the queue here. And just to show I've nothing up my sleeve, I'm going to change the amount of the order to the current time, 15:29. And we'll just put a 5 on this order number here. So that's all I need to send through. And I'm sending it to this demo queue that we subscribed to. So just hit publish, and if I go back to the database and go to the content and refresh that, you'll see there that I've actually I've sent that piece of information over to the database. Now, obviously we need to know a little bit more information about that. So the easiest way to do that is if we just go into the monitoring console. I'll just log into that now. And when we open that up, I'm going to switch to my secure agent that's handling the processing for me, which ends M90. And I'm going to go to active processes. And one of the processes that I will see there, version 6 that executed at 29 minutes past the hour, if I just click that, it's going to show me a full breakdown of the process as it executed. And so each of these steps, as this just loads up, I'll just give it a sec, my connection slowed down. So you can see here that, yes, we did receive an event. We did assign that to our in-memory process object here to represent our order. We also sent the request off. Now let's just have a look at the request bin and just refresh that. and you can see here we've got our request. 1529 was the payload, and the order ID was 12345. So that's been sent to request bin, but that could easily have been any other service that's available via REST or a SOAP-based API. And we can also see in RabbitMQ that it's actually no longer in the queue. It's been acknowledged. It's been taken off the queue. Now, if I was to just continue to send a few of these messages, you can see them all going onto the queue here. I just close that. You see they've been published, and just if I go refresh this, you can see they've already ended up in the database. And likewise, if I was to refresh the monitoring here, we'll have a number of additional new processes that have executed. You can see all at 31 minutes past the hour. And so no matter how many times I rapidly fire off these messages, each of them is being immediately received by Informatica Cloud Real Time, processed and put straight into the database. Now, you may be thinking, well, what if I wanted to do more with this? Well, it's really just a case of adding in, if I just close that down, just adding in more detail to your process. So you could have error handling in here. You could equally be calling off to Salesforce or any different type of API enabled system. Or you could be writing files and things like that. Now, if you wanted to come through and write to an AMQP source, you could actually just have that in here. If I just look at it here, my default queue target, it's as simple as just saying, well, here's my event, and then I could just decide what I actually want to pass to it. So you can see all the different parts that are in memory here. It could be that I just want to send my my order, or just send the actual event through to that target queue. So that really brings us to a close. Hopefully this is helpful. If you want to know more about our support for messaging such as JMS and AMQP, definitely take a look at our website, informatica.com, and you can also find more information there about the other parts of Cloud Real Time, such as our ability to handle the user interface part of this and create guides that can be followed, mobile interaction, as well as handling the messaging that you've seen today. So thanks very much for joining us, and please check out our website. Thank you.